Hi there, let's take a look at Chapter 7 and I'll explain the normal distribution command in Excel. So I'm going to do number 43 from this chapter also on page 244. A recent report in USA Today indicated a typical family of 4 spends $490 per month on food. Assume the distribution of food expenditures for a family of 4 follows the normal distribution with a mean of $490 and a standard deviation of $90. So I've drawn on our board the normal distribution with mean of 490, a standard deviation of 90, just as a visual, and I'll mark up our graph a little bit as we go. Question A asks, what percent of families spend more than $30 but less than $490 per month on food? Okay, so where is 30 on our graph? It's way down here past 1 standard deviation. So we're not able to use the empirical rule for this because it's not on a major stepping stone. So I will use the normal distribution command on Excel. And for this case, I want to know, okay, 30 is down there somewhere. So let's just pretend. Okay, 30 is down here somewhere. And, you know, and the graph will keep going all the way to 0. So I want to know from 30 all the way up to 490. Okay, so from here all the way up to 490. That's what I want for A. Is it the entire bottom half? No. Remember that our normal curve is symmetric. That means I could split it in half and it's going to look the same on both sides. If I stop at 30 though, is that really including the entire half? No, technically it is not. So I'm going to start with the entire half, or 50%, and subtract what I don't want. What I don't want is the part that Excel can add up. Excel can add up from 0 up to 30. So I'm going to take the entire 50% here, the entire half, and I'm going to subtract the part I don't want. That means I'm going to use my normal distribution command for Excel and tell it to add up to 30. So I'm going to go up to 30 with a mean of 490, standard deviation of 90. And the nice thing about the normal command in Excel is that you will always use a 1. It will always be accumulating. So that's easier than chapter 6. And that gives me okay, this part here is so close to 0. If you put this part into Excel, you might see scientific notation, which says times 10 to the negative 7, or an e to the negative 7 if you're doing it on your calculator. What that means is you're going to have 7 decimal places before your first number. So essentially, you're taking 0.5 minus a very, very, very small number, which is essentially 0. So when you actually take 0.5 minus that value, what you get is uh, 0.4999984, which is essentially a half. Okay, so if you actually look the answer to this problem back in the back of the book, it's going to tell you 50%. That's because of rounding. Okay, so practically speaking, you know, the graph is asymptotic. It's never going to actually reach 0, but it is so close to it that practically speaking here, we're going to cover 50% of the data here if we're that close to 0. Okay, let's go for the problem B. What percent of families spend less than $430 per month? Okay, well this part is easy for me to calculate in Excel because less than 430 is going to add up from 0. So I'm going to tell Excel to add from 0 all the way up to 430. Okay, that's what I want Excel to do here. So I'm simply going to put in my normal command, and I'm going to tell Excel, hey, add up to 430 for me, when I have a mean of 490 and a standard deviation of 90. And that's going to give me about 25%. Question C, what percent spend between 430 and 600? Okay, let's know what we already have. We already have up to 430. Is that what this problem wants? No. What C wants us to do, let's see if I can keep this color coordinated now. What C wants us to do is to take from 430 up to 600. Okay, C wants this pink part. Excel can't do the pink part. Excel can do the entire value up to 600 from 0. And then I'm going to have to tell it to subtract the part we don't want. So Excel is going to add all the way up to 600, and then I'm going to take off what we've already calculated. Okay, so I'm going to start by telling it to add up values all the way up to 600. So I put 600 in my formula first. And then I'm going to tell it to subtract what I already know. Okay, I already know this value is 0.2514. Or if you're doing this in Excel, you can do enter the normal command, put your minus sign in, and then click the cell that the answer is in. And it'll do it for you, so you don't actually have to type anything else in. But regardless, you're going to subtract what we've already calculated, what we don't want, and that's going to give us almost 64%. Okay, one more question here. D asks, what percent spent between $500 and $600 per month on food? Okay, again, Excel cannot do 500 to 600. So we're going to have Excel calculate all the way up to 600. It's really the same thing as C, just with a different number. What we want is between 500 and 600. That's not what Excel can do. So we're going to ask Excel to calculate from 0 all the way up to 600 actually, and we are going to subtract off up to 500. Okay, Excel can calculate all the way up to 600. It can also calculate all the way up to 500, so we'll tell it to take off the part we don't want. Okay, in this case, I'm going to write down 2 normal commands. So when I'm writing it down, I'm essentially doing 2 normal commands. What I would do on Excel is actually put them in different cells and then subtract them. Okay, that kind of makes it easier for you to keep things straight. So again, plus you might already have this 600 piece in one box if you've already done it that way in one cell. Tell Excel to calculate all the way up to 600 with your mean and standard deviation, and tell it to subtract all the way up to 500. Okay, so essentially you're going to be doing 2 different normal commands here, and that's going to give you 34.5%. Okay, so I really do think that the normal command is easier by far than the formula in the book, but it's easier than chapter 6 with the binomial distribution because it's always accumulating. So you really just have to figure out, are you adding pieces together? Are you subtracting from 100? Are you subtracting from a half? Do you need to start with the value and then subtract from a half? So if I wanted 490 up to 670, I would tell Excel to do all the way up to 670 and take off the half I don't want. Okay, so listen to the video again and you can mull that over. But anyways, so again, it's just trying to figure out what piece of the problem you want. So if you need to set up that normal curve for a visual, do that. I think that's a great method there. Okay, thanks. Let me know if you have problems. Have a good week.